The medium version of Belial's Fireball, Goetia, has seen several buffs across the board. We'll go into each of the properties. Before, its damage was 800. The recovery was 49 frames as well after being fired. And the mid-air hit stun was about 18 frames. On grounded hit, the opponent would stay in place.
Great.
The damage has been increased by 400, so now it deals 1200. Additionally, it launches grounded foes on hit. There's also 2 more frames of mid-air hit stun, as well as 6 less frames of recovery overall. This opens up a lot of new combo potential for Belial off of this move. While the damage from the combos I can find with this change don't quite catch up to the damage that his existing combos already do, there is a little bit of important set play difference here. You could opt for a combo like this and have Goetia off a cooldown after a super to set up a meaty fireball. That's the difference in your fireball cooldown between the two combos. Still, I would imagine that most players would opt for the higher damaging combo given the situation, but maybe in some matchups or in some opportunities, you prefer to have the fireball off cooldown to set up a meaty. The reduction in recovery to medium Goetia also means that Belial will now have a safe cancel into this medium version for ending his block strings. Before, if he stopped here, he was -10 and punishable. Now, if he does this medium Goetia on block, he's -4 and safe. Belial appreciates having other ways of safely ending his pressure outside of light and medium Asmodeus. As in anti-air, you weren't really able to get much off of Goetia if you were able to hit an opponent out of the sky, especially if it was a counter hit. Now, on counter hit, you get a full 60 frames of hit stun to work with, as well as the lateral knockback has been reduced and the launch height has been increased, making it easier to get combos. Belial appreciates this, considering that usually he has to rely on the DPs to get his anti-airs off. I can't tell you how many times I've been playing games and I've tried to anti-air their opponent with his 2H and gotten stuff for it. This might be a nice appreciation. His anti-air damage overall is still going to be lower, but having more options in order to get better damage, or even just a little more reward for some of them, is something that he will appreciate. Ultimate Goetia sees an incredible buff and a reduction to its recovery after the first hit. The frame advantage before was +14 on block. Now it's +38. This means that Belial is able to act far sooner out of this one. While I don't think it's going to be anything in particularly noteworthy as a mix-up tool, there's several implications for his neutral game and his combo routing because of this change. While this being an ultimate fireball could beat other non-ultimate fireballs, your ability to convert off of it was pretty limited at mid and full screen. This meant that it wasn't really a good option for Belial to throw on out at neutral. The best you would get is just some damage and a knockdown. With the reduced recovery, he's now actually able to threaten meaningful damage from mid-screen with it. As a combo tool, it worked nicely for him to get mid-screen launches and combos to extend his damage in case he didn't have enough meter for SBA. Now he's able to change up his combo routing to some simpler routes that do more damage. You can still do the old loops as well in case you have that preference for it, but just be aware that they're not as optimal as the route I just presented. More importantly, I would say for his combo routing is that now Belial can actually use this to swap sides with the opponent. There's plenty of things to explore here, but the fact that Belial can have his back to the corner, then spend his SBA gauge to swap sides with the opponent and get a knockdown leading into corner pressure is a massive buff for him. Like many other DPs, the first and second hit of his heavy Notoria are now unrecoverable, which is to prevent it so that if Belial does get these hits, but the rest of them whiff, the opponent no longer is able to recover and then get a punish on him where they shouldn't have before. It's hard to set up a situation to demonstrate this change, so just be aware that if you ever hit this DP with Belial, you can always count on a knockdown. The medium version of Asmodeus has an extra 5 hit stun frames on airborne hit, and the lateral knockback on that first hit has also been reduced. We've been seeing the ramifications of this throughout my demonstrations with the Goetia buffs. I find that it's very easy now to link into a close heavy attack after using a medium Asmodeus in some of these combos. Again, this just means that Belial gets more damage overall in his combos, and that these combos that were a little tricky to execute before are a little simpler for him now. The ultimate version of Asmodeus sees a couple of changes. Before, it would act as a guard crush on block. On hit, you had about plus 41 frames of advantage. Now, it no longer causes a guard crush on block. As Belial didn't really have a means to take advantage of this, I don't think he really cares for this change too much. On hit, he's now plus 44. This honestly doesn't change too much for Belial here. He already got safe jumps against 8-frame DPs in the old version of it before. I only really think the meaningful thing about this buff is that he's able to set up fireballs a little more reliably as meaties. The medium version of Visago sees a couple of buffs to try to make it a more viable tool in his kit. Before, the startup was an abysmal 52 frames. This is ridiculously reactable, especially if you train yourself to react to the cue of him walking forward with the laugh. And if you could do that, you got a big punish opportunity on him as well. The startup has been reduced by 6 frames, so now it takes 46 frames to hit. Honestly, it's still very minor, as this is an incredibly slow command throw. However, the recovery has been dramatically reduced to 12 frames. Now, if you react to this throw with a jump, Belial is actually able to still be plus. So he's able to interweave this with the light version in order to keep the opponent guessing as to which one he's throwing out. If you jump the light throw, you're going to be able to get a punish. If you jump the medium throw, he's able to go ahead and just keep his offense going. This encourages the opponent to try and mash more against him, I think. Ultimate Visago also sees some buffs. Before, the first active frame for the throw was 42. Now, the throw comes out at frame 32, 10 frames faster. It's certainly a noticeable difference. At high-level play, players would be able to notice the use of SBA gauge in his HUD and then have plenty of time to react to the jump, allow the entire animation to play out so they didn't accidentally trigger the counter frames to it and then get a punish on him. Now it's more of a split-second reaction that you have to make that overall improves the viability of this move at high levels. Let's talk about my own thoughts on Belial. I think many people would be surprised that the character that won EVO this year in the hands of Aaron DeMack received nothing but buffs in the patch that followed it. However, I do have to point out the reality of the development process, and the fact of the matter is that this patch has been under planning for quite some time, well before the results of EVO came on out. So I imagine that Arxis and Cygames wanted to look at Belial and decided that they wanted to have it so that more of his underutilized tools in his kit actually had a purpose to help diversify the character and flesh out his overall design. While Belial was certainly a top 5 character in the previous patch, he wasn't a god-level threat to the metagame like Nier was before. I think it was fairly safe to say that while Belial was very strong in the previous patch, he certainly felt like he was beatable, and I don't think that feeling is going to change in this patch as he has some extra utility in his offense and combo game overall. Still, a character that was top 5 in the previous patch, receiving nothing but buffs and also not really feeling the effect of any of the system mechanic nerfs to him in this patch, probably puts him in prime position to become a top 3 character within this patch. What I'm most curious about, though, is if he's going to be a healthier top-tier character than what Nier was in the previous patch. With all the changes we've been seeing so far to the cast, I can imagine that many more characters are going to become viable tournament characters to play within this patch, while also limiting the gap between the best of the best characters in the cast and those just a step underneath them as well. Nier was certainly on a tier of her own in previous versions of the game, and now I don't know if Belial is going to be as highly seated above the rest of the competition as Nier was before, though I am spoiling my thoughts as to Nier going forward, but we'll get to her eventually. For now, it's time to go to Belial's other form, Avatar.